A lot of people say modern life feels dead, and the solution is very simple.
It's all waiting for you in the third space.
Third space.
Third places.
Belonging is the opposite of loneliness. So what's the solution? Third spaces.
The third place. If only people could have a place where they could meet, chat, and work through their differences, we'd be better off as a society. Now, really? That thing over there? I'm not entirely convinced, but I get it. And third place might not be what people think about when they think about third places. The problem, though, is that third place has become a bit of a buzzword, and no one knows what it actually means. So I did my research. I read the book from the person who theorized third places. I watched a bunch of lectures from people who like them, people who don't like them.
Third place to me means sitting down.
And most importantly, I asked myself, what does this obsession with third spaces say about us, about how we feel, about what we're longing for? And I came to a dreadful conclusion. Third places are a bit BS. Okay guys, allow me just 1 minute to tell you about today's sponsor, Surfshark. You know I love my job, but it forces me to move around a lot. I'm always researching, interviewing, sometimes I speak at events or collaborate with other creatives, and because of that I have to constantly move from cafes, airports, hotels, or whatever free Wi-Fi I can connect to for just a few minutes. That still sounds convenient, until you remember that most public Wi-Fi is basically wide open. Anyone on that network could, in theory, see what you're doing. Emails, passwords, private messages, all of that. And since I'm often uploading files or sending things last minute, I used to just hope nothing sketchy was happening in the background. That's why I started using Surfshark. I have it on my laptop and on my phone, which are the two devices I rely on the most when I'm traveling. It encrypts my connection, hides my IP, and makes all my online activity much harder to track. As a female content creator, that level of privacy is really important to me. You know, I've had weird experiences, including people showing up at events they were not invited to, so that extra layer of protection when I'm researching or when I'm planning things is something I deeply appreciate. But Surfshark goes beyond the VPN part. It blocks trackers and ads, monitor your personal info for leaks, and one account protects unlimited devices if you want your whole household covered. And by the way, if like me you travel often, it is super helpful for accessing sites or keeping up with your favorite shows that are blocked in certain places. You can simply switch your virtual location and keep working like normal. Now if you want to try it, and I highly recommend it, you can go to surfshark.com/Alice or use my code Alice at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. Thank you Surfshark for sponsoring the video, and now let's go back to it. So what actually is a third space? People online talk about third spaces with this almost mystical tone. It's an idea more than an actual thing. The term itself comes from Ray Oldenburg, who introduced the concept in his 1989 book, The Great Good Place. His argument was simple. Human life, according to him, takes place across 3 realms. The first place, the home. The second place, work. And the third place, the informal social world in between. The kind of places Oldenburg celebrated were neighborhood bars, pubs, diners, barbershops, corner stores, so places where people returned regularly and gradually became known to one another. Places where conversation happened naturally, where people lingered without needing a particular reason, and honestly, when you read Oldenburg, the original idea feels surprisingly reasonable. He wasn't describing some utopian solution to alienation, he was mostly observing forms of everyday social life that already existed around him, and he was worrying they were disappearing. He describes third places through a set of characteristics. They're supposed to be accessible, informal, playful, conversational, a kind of home away from home. So spaces where social status matters a little less and where participation feels easy, which is interesting because that's not exactly how people talk about third spaces anymore. I mean, the original idea of the third space wasn't stupid. The problem is what it was turned into. Today, the term has taken on this strange, almost sacred quality online. Third spaces are constantly invoked as the cure for loneliness, for political polarization, for declining community, even for the mental health crisis. And when people imagine them now, they usually picture something very different from Oldenburg's smoky neighborhood pub. The modern third place is all about aesthetic. Warm lighting, minimalist furniture, vinyl records, natural wine, maybe someone typing on a laptop in the corner. So somewhere along the way, the third place stopped being a sociological concept and became a lifestyle category.
So free. One more
Confession here, I actually went to one of those events recently. Don't judge me, or you can judge me. I can be an insufferable hipster at times. It happens, okay? But that transformation we're describing here is important because Oldenburg's original examples were not curated spaces. They were not events designed to communicate authenticity. Most of them were ordinary, cheap, sometimes ugly places embedded into everyday life. That was the whole point, you see. The third place wasn't valuable because it was beautiful. It was valuable because people actually used it habitually. But once the concept entered internet culture, it immediately became aestheticized and commodified. You can see it everywhere now. Real estate developers promise community-oriented spaces. Co-working companies advertise themselves as solving isolation. Every newly opened bar suddenly presents itself as a cultural hub. Even giant corporations have started using the language of belonging and connection. Today, the third place often appears as just another consumer experience. People rarely describe actual interactions when they talk about third places. They describe feelings. Warmth, authenticity, community. The third place becomes the fantasy of frictionless sociality. But Oldenburg's examples weren't frictionless at all. They were repetitive, sometimes irritating, full of people you wouldn't necessarily choose to spend time with. The regulars in a neighborhood aren't carefully selected for compatibility, they're just there all the time. That's what made those spaces socially interesting.
Everybody wants third spaces until a homeless guy shows up. Now there's a lot of talk about third spaces for a reason. We need places to form community beyond just home and work. But that begs the question of who gets to be a part of our communities. You want more parks, more libraries, but then you complain when these public infrastructures are, well, public. For the unhoused, the importance of public spaces isn't just a matter of wanting somewhere to chill with friends, it's a matter of existence and freedom.
And honestly, even Oldenburg's nostalgia can feel selective at times. Many of the spaces he celebrates were heavily male environments, so places built around specific habits and exclusions that he doesn't always fully interrogate. To be fully honest with you, some of the passages in the book are blatantly sexist. Oh, you don't believe me? Look at this one. And this one. Look at this. And now tell me this is not sexist. There's a tendency throughout third place discourse to romanticize all the forms of communal living without asking who exactly felt welcome within them. I still feel like the reason why the concept became so successful is that it expresses a real longing. People clearly feel that something about social life has deteriorated, and third place gives a name to that feeling without requiring too much political analysis. It transforms a big question into something very concrete. If people are lonely, maybe we just need better places to gather. It's an incredibly appealing idea because it feels manageable, and that's probably why the concept spreads so easily online, because it allows people to talk about alienation in a softer, more comforting language, not through economics, politics, or class, but through design, atmosphere, and urban planning. And once you notice that, the whole conversation starts sounding slightly different, because people aren't just mourning the disappearance of bars or barbershops or local diners, they're mourning the disappearance of a certain kind of everyday social life. So this is Drury Street. This is one of my favorite streets in Dublin because it's lively, it's semi-pedestrian, it's full of colors, but it's also a controversial place. For years, Drury Street has become a spot for public drinking. People sit on the curb, bars allow customers to leave with drinks, others show up with their own drinks. Not everyone is happy about it though. Recently, one of the most iconic bars on the street, Sis Madden's, saw its outdoor terrace license briefly come under threat, triggering fears that the city council was moving toward restricting outdoor drinking on Drury Street. The terrace has since reopened, but the uncertainty, the threats haven't fully disappeared. You see, the reason why I chose Drury Street is because it's the perfect example of the limits of third place discourse. It raises questions like who the city is for and who gets to use it. The debate around outdoor drinking in Drury Street is part of a bigger conversation about people's right to the city. The idea of the right to the city, first developed by Henri Lefebvre in the late 1960s, approaches urban life differently from third place theory. Third places are usually described as specific sites of sociability. Pubs, cafes, barbershops, etc. Places where people casually spend time together. And Lefebvre was interested in something broader. For him, the city wasn't just a backdrop for social life, but something produced collectively by the people who live in it. So when he talks about the right to the city, he's referring not only to access, but to the ability to inhabit urban space in a meaningful way and participate in shaping what it becomes. The idea was later expanded by David Harvey, who tied it more directly to capitalism and urban development. For Harvey, Harvey, the key question is not simply whether cities contain enough spaces for social life, but who controls the way those spaces are produced and used. He argues that urban space is increasingly organized around profit, rather than the needs of the people who live in it.
Cities are being increasingly built for people to invest in and actually being built in such a way to absorb surplus capital, in effect meaningless forms of urbanization.
Drury Street embodies that tension. The conflict ultimately comes down to how space is used when it doesn't produce clear economic value, when people are sitting outside, talking, drinking. For some, this is what urban life is supposed to be, but for others, this is unproductive. It should be managed or restricted. In Rebel Cities, Harvey pushes this further, arguing that cities don't just concentrate capital through real estate and infrastructure, but also concentrate people, and therefore frustration, inequality, and political energy. That's why for him, urban uprisings tend to emerge in cities. From the Paris Commune to Occupy Wall Street, the street becomes a place where that density of life spills into political action. But here's a counterexample for you, Harvey. The Yellow Vest movement in France. The Yellow Vest movement was a big deal. It began in November 2018, and it's often associated internationally with the streets of Paris. You can see some popular pictures on screen. But here in France, the most recognizable space of the Yellow Vest movement remains the roundabout. Protesters occupied circular junctions across suburban and peri-urban France, turning what are usually spaces of circulation into spaces of gathering and protesting. These were not originally designed as social spaces at all. In fact, they are closer to what we call non-places, so sites of transit or sites that don't really have a very defined purpose. But yeah, they did become places of socialization and protests. Drivers passing by the roundabouts would usually scream or beep. I did that a few times myself. And that matters because suburban France, like many suburban landscapes everywhere, is often defined by a lack of traditional social infrastructures. As writer Annie Ernaux wrote in her work on contemporary suburban French life, shopping centers, parking lots, and supermarket corridors often end up becoming the default places where everyday social life happened. So the roundabout wasn't designed for social life, but it became one anyway. The funny thing is that Oldenburg actually wrote his thesis on third spaces from his suburban home in the US. He felt constrained by the isolation of suburban life in the home and lamented the days when he could hang out with his buddies at the pub. But as we mentioned earlier, this frustration with suburban life and his call for third places also stemmed from his sexist belief that men and women should have separate spheres and that the suburban home should remain the space of the woman. And this led me to think a bit deeper about how third spaces, by cultivating their difference from the home, don't really challenge this idea of separate spheres. So in order to truly revolutionize the way we experience everyday social life, we also maybe need to open up our homes. In France, the people who go to third places, as we commonly understand them, are stereotyped as bobo. It's a term used to describe hipsters. Bobo is a contraction of bourgeois bohème.
Je dis ça, je dis rien, mais je dis quand même, les brunchs sont quinoa.
Now, bourgeois and bohème are two almost contradictory notions. Bourgeois implies ownership, stability, private property, while bohème evokes more precarious, communal, and non-conventional ways of living. In 19th century France, for example, the bohemian was usually imagined as an artist, a student, or a political radical living outside respectable bourgeois life. The term itself came from the French bohème, originally used for Romani people who were wrongly believed to have come from the region of Bohemia in Central Europe. Over time, though, the word lost its ethnic meaning and became associated with a broader urban culture of precarious artistic life. Conservatives increasingly used it as shorthand for decadence and the moral decline of modern society. Writers like Max Nordau portrayed Bohemian culture as a symptom of civilizational degeneration, while Edouard Drummond tied hostility towards Bohemia to anti-republican and anti-Semitic ideas. So not great. At the same time, though, Bohemia became one of the main environments where arts and radical politics mixed together in 19th century France. A neighborhood that many of you know, Montmartre, became associated with a more porous kind of urban culture where the boundary between domestic life and public life felt much less defined. Artists like Edouard Manet, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, and Claude Monet gathered in cafes and bars outside official institutions. Figures like Gustave Courbet openly connected artistic life with socialism and revolutionary politics. politics, turning Bohemia into both a cultural and political space. And a century later, this lifestyle was echoed across the Atlantic in places like New York. In Growing Up, Bank Street, writer Donna Florio recounts growing up in Greenwich Village during the 1960s and 70s in a neighborhood where apartments rarely felt entirely private. Neighbors moved in and out of each other's home, children spent much of their time between apartments, and social life unfolded collectively across the building and the neighborhood itself. Greenwich Village has changed a lot. Today you have to be fairly well off to live there. In Greenwich and beyond, it has become normal to never really interact with your neighbors or to never invite people into your home. Not necessarily because you don't want to, but because, the conditions make it harder. With rising rents and shrinking living spaces, many people are pushed further apart physically, which makes spontaneous encounters more difficult. At the same time, we've seen the growth of what I would call the stay-at-home market, which makes staying in increasingly appealing. What do I mean by stay-at-home market? Well, streaming subscriptions, food delivery services, the expansion of homeware, the democratization of home decor through brands like H&M, Zara, or even Temu. And on top of that, since the pandemic, the home has also become an office for many people. So I get it. The incentive isn't necessarily to return to some bohemian, communal living type of lifestyle, even though some will argue that the cost of living is actually pushing people in that direction. They can't go out anymore, they can't afford to pay 2 drinks in a bar. So anyway, if you had to remember one thing from this part and from this video in general, it's that the solution to our longing for a different kind of everyday social life will not be found in a specific space, like Oldenburg implied. In my view, too much attention to third spaces prevents us from looking at the background in which everyday social life actually emerges. We mentioned a few examples throughout the video. Streets, parks, someone looking outside their door or window, non-places like roundabouts, the pavement outside schools where parents pick up their kids, or supermarket car parks. I think we massively underestimate the importance of these everyday infrastructures in shaping our social lives. And again, I don't just mean transport systems or benches or bike lanes. I mean all the small things that make repeated contacts possible. Seeing the same people every morning, walking the same streets, waiting around after school, recognizing faces at the local shop. A lot of what we call community is built through this kind of accidental familiarity. And maybe that's why I've become slightly suspicious of the obsession with third spaces, because it makes social life sound like something that only happens in special designated spaces. But most human connection doesn't emerge in one magical location. It emerges slowly across everyday routines through repetition and proximity. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, if you liked it, don't forget to leave a little like, to leave a little subscribe if it's not already done, to hype the video. Is that still something you can do? I can't remember. To leave a comment, all that good stuff, the engagement, the drill. Thank you Surfshark for sponsoring the video. You can go to surfshark.com/Alice or use my code Alice at checkout to get full extra month of Surfshark VPN. A big thank you to my patrons for their support, and a special thank to top tier patrons. I'm literally a fork. Hamid, Shunak, Sibev, Jose, Nofo, Fred, Hongxing Wang, Paul Louis Agenot, Patrick Button, Jeff Lee, Taya Matin, Nick, Brandon, James Siddle, James Ojual, Patrick, Boris, Ria Koriji, Tristan, Christopher, Jan, Donage, Alex, Manuel, Christopher France, and Perry. And thank you to the other ones who prefer to stay anonymous. That's it for me. That's it for today. I'll see you very soon. Oh, yeah, by the way, someone told me in the comments that the clock always has the same time. They were wondering if I was always filming at the same time. No, it's just because I need to change the batteries and I'm too lazy to do so. So maybe, hopefully, next time when I'm filming, it will be changed. It's more likely to be just taken off completely. But anyway, I'll see you very soon. Salut!